Hello, third grade, and welcome to lesson 4-6. In this lesson, we're going to work on division that involves using 0 and 1. Let's go ahead and watch our short video, and then we're going to jump in and go over our notes and our guided practice together.
Goldfish make great pets.
How do you divide with 1 or 0? Think about the question during the lesson. Neil has 3 bowls. He puts 1 goldfish in each bowl. How many goldfish did Neil put in bowls? Find 3 divided by 1. You can start to solve this problem using multiplication. What number times 1 is 3?
Select your answer.
Three times 1 equals 3. So 3 divided by 1 equals 3. Neil put 3 goldfish in bowls. So if you divide 3 goldfish into groups of 1, you get 3 groups. The rule for dividing by 1 is that any number divided by 1 is itself. Now, let's try 3 divided by 3. To find 3 divided by 3, think 3 times what number equals 3?
Select your answer.
Three times 1 equals 3. So 3 divided by 3 equals 1. So if you divide 3 goldfish into groups of 3, you get 1 group. So the rule for 1 as a quotient is that any number except 0 divided by itself is 1. Now let's find 0 divided by 3. Think 3 times what number equals 0? 3 times 0 equals 0. So 0 divided by 3 equals 0. You start with 0 goldfish and divide them into groups of 3. There are 0 groups. So the rule for dividing 0 by a number is that 0 divided by any number except 0 is 0. Now let's try dividing by 0. 0 times what number equals 3? There is no such number, so 3 divided by 0 can't be done. Groups of 0 do not make any sense. So the rule for dividing by 0 is that you cannot divide any number by 0. Now you know all the rules for dividing with 0 and 1.
All right, so take a minute to review these rules really carefully. Now, the rule for dividing by 1 is that any number divided by 1 is itself. Now, this is very similar to our identity property of multiplication, where we said any number times 1 is equal to that same number. Your rule for 1 as a quotient. Remember, quotient means a quotient is the answer to a division problem. So when you have 1 as a quotient, that means 1 is your answer. And we know that any number except for 0, when you divide it by itself, equals 1. So if you have 3 cookies and you want to share them with 3 friends, each friend is going to get 1. If you have 5 books that you want to share with 5 friends, each friend is going to be able to read 1 book. Now we also have a rule for dividing 0 by a number. So if I have nothing and I want to share it with a group, none of them get anything. So any number, 0 divided by any number except for 0 is equal to 0. So if I have no cookies, but I have 3 friends, I can't give my friends anything. They all get 0 cookies because I didn't have any cookies to start with. And the last one, when you're dividing by 0, you can't do that because you can't divide a number by 0. Remember, we have to be able to do the inverse to double check. So we do the opposite. So for our rule for dividing by 1, any number divided by 1 is itself. Just like we can say a number times 1 is also itself. The rule for 1 is a quotient. If we have a number, 1 times a number is equal to that number, then that number divided by itself is also going to equal 1. So these are related to your fact family facts. And if we have a number divided by 0, or sorry, if we have 0 divided by a number equals 0, we're going to flip that around. So 0 times a number is also going to be equal to 0. Let's go ahead and take a look at our notes for this lesson, and then we're going to work through our guided practice. Now, our notes for this lesson, 4-6, division involving 0 and 1. How do you divide with 1 and 0, and what rules do you have to follow? So when we have 1 as a quotient, so any number except for 0, when you divide it by itself, is equal to 1. So 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Any number divided by itself equals 1. Just like 1 times any number, that number stays the same. And you can use, remember, your fact family facts when you're doing these because they'll be very helpful. Next, when we're dividing 0 by a number. So when you try and divide 0 by any number except for 0, your answer will always be 0. If you don't have anything, your groups have 0 in each one of them. So if I have no cookies to share with my friends, it doesn't matter how many friends I have, none of them are going to get any cookies. So 0 divided by 3 is 0, just like 3 times 0 is equal to 0. Now for dividing by 0, we said there's no such thing because we can't divide a whole number by 0. You can't do the inverse operation. So 3 divided by 0 doesn't exist. Since we can't do 0 times a number to equal that 3, we can't do 3 divided by 0. You have to be able to flip it to check your work. If you're not able to do that, then this one, we just proved that this one doesn't exist. Now let's take a look at our guided practice questions. So I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. And we're going to take a look at our guided practice questions, and then we're going to solve them together. So for our guided practice, number 1, it says, how can you tell without dividing that 375 divided by 375 equals 1? And our second one says, use a representation to explain why 0 divided by any number except 0 is 0. Now, when they say representation, they're talking about drawing a picture or showing using your numbers. So show your answer. And then we'll solve these remaining problems as well. Let's go ahead and jump back and see our guided practice together. So we know that any number divided by itself except 0 is equal to 1. I know this from the 1 as a quotient rule. So if you have 2 books and you want to share them with 2 friends, each friend is going to get 1 book. If you had 5 books that you wanted to share with 5 friends, each friend is still only going to get 1 book. For number 2, I can show that 0 divided by any number other than 0 is equal to 0. So 0 divided by 5 equals 0 because 0 times 5 is also equal to 0. If I have 0 apples to share with 5 friends, they don't get any apples because I have none to share. For this next part, we need to find 8 divided by 8 equals a number. So we need to stop and think. 8 times what number equals 8? I know that 8 times 1 equals 8, so that means 8 divided by 8 equals 1. And that follows our 1 as a quotient rule. The next one, we needed to find 0 divided by 9. So I have to think 9 times what number is equal to 0? Now we know from our math fact and our 0 property that any number times 0 is equal to 0. So 9 times 0 is equal to 0. And that tells us that 0 divided by 9 is also equal to 0. Now this lesson was mainly a review of the facts that you already knew, and it did introduce a couple new properties for us. Make sure you go over your notes very carefully, rewatch the video if you have any questions about it. And if you have any questions, you can also ask me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.